Welcome back to the Mold Safe Home Build channel, where I'm sharing my entire journey to building a mold safe home with you, starting with living full-time RV life. If you're new to this channel, I've already released 4 videos all about RV life for those of you that are healing from mold, so be sure to check those out. In this video, I'm going to share my tips specifically for avoiding mold exposure while you're living RV life. And I want to start by saying that I know there are people out there who are doing more extreme forms of mold avoidance, using the location effect, trying to avoid absolutely all toxins, including all kinds of toxins that might be in the air outside, doing frequent decontamination of their body and belongings. For me, that level of mold avoidance was not necessary, and I don't think it was achievable either. And I think it actually would have significantly delayed my healing because of how stressful it would have been to achieve that. And as you may or may not know, I'm a doctor that has been specialized in helping people heal their nervous system. And what I know from that experience working with many people healing from mold and chronic illness is that you need to have a regulated nervous system in order to heal as quickly and completely as you can. Nervous system regulation is necessary for optimal detox capacity. It's also necessary for fighting infections and for keeping the immune system balanced, preventing things like mast cell activation syndrome and autoimmunity from getting really out of control. And it's also necessary for tissue repair. And chronic high level nervous system dysregulation also makes sensitivities of all kinds so much worse, whether that's a sensitivity to mold itself or to foods or to chemicals or light, sound, all kinds of things. I have come across so many people who have been unable to do any kind of treatment to help themselves heal from mold illness because their sensitivities are off the charts, because they can't tolerate supplements of any kind, even a homeopathic remedy. Some of them can't even tolerate doing sauna and all kinds of other things. And so it really delays their healing. And in all of those cases, the way those people get to the point where they can move forward, well, it's two things. One, it's getting out of the toxic mold environment, and two, it's getting their nervous system regulated. And usually, the nervous system regulation part is the part that they don't want to do, and it's the part they have to do to be able to start making progress, start really healing, and being able to use any kind of treatment that they might need for that. So for me, extreme mold avoidance was not the right path. And I don't think it's the right path for most people recovering from toxic mold exposure because it is so incredibly hard to do and stressful. So that's not what I'm covering today. I would consider what I'm talking about moderate mold avoidance. This is going to be what I think is applicable and would be helpful to people who have had pretty severe toxic mold exposures and are really trying to move the needle with their recovery as quickly as possible and not get extremely wigged out and afraid in the process. So, without further ado, let me share these things that I've learned that will reduce your chance of a serious toxic mold exposure while living RV life. Number one, start by buying an RV that does not have wood, paper, or cardboard in the construction. The reason to avoid these materials in the construction of the RV you have is because it's perfect food for mold, and mold can start growing on these really easily when there's just enough moisture present, which could be from a leak of some kind, or it could be just from high humidity levels. Unfortunately, just like new homes being built today, new RVs can also have severe toxic mold problems before they're even sold, before anyone has ever even lived in them, before they've ever had a leak. And that's because these building materials that they're using are so susceptible to moisture and mold growth, and they're not even protected from moisture in the process of the build. And so mold is already growing on it, even as it's being constructed. And that is just tragic to me. I've had patients and clients who have come to me who said, I bought an RV to get out of my toxic moldy house and I got sicker or I just couldn't heal. And finally, I figured out, I tested, and turned out the RV was just as bad or worse than the home I was living in as far as the toxins I was being exposed to. So please don't make that mistake and think that because the RV is new, that you're not going to have a toxic mold problem in it. Water leaks and high humidity are not uncommon in RVs, but if your RV is made without mold's favorite foods, you're less likely to have a severely toxic mold problem in your RV. I would say a lot less likely, which is why I'm doing it. For me, it even seemed a lot less likely than in a traditional apartment or home where I've had exposure after exposure after exposure. So, the two RV companies that I know that are making RVs without wood, paper, and cardboard are ATC and Live Trailers. Those are the only two I know of that are building without these organic materials that mold loves to eat when there's enough moisture present. So those are the two that I would look into as potential contenders or good options for healing from toxic mold and not having another exposure in the process. Okay, number two, don't bring things on the road with you into your new life, into your new space that's supposed to be designated for your healing that can't be contaminated of mold, spores, fragments, mycotoxins, etc., that were in your last home, right? So don't bring pillows, mattresses, shoes, upholstered or fabric furniture, hats like baseball caps that have cardboard in them, purses, backpacks, books, papers, cardboard, air purifiers, space heaters, dehumidifiers, humidifiers, fans, things like that that were exposed to toxic mold in your last, home or your apartment or whatever. Don't bring those with you into your healthy living space, your healing space that is your RV. So think about things that are fabric, leather, have stuffing that can't be thoroughly washed with borax and EC3 and dried. Definitely don't bring things that are paper, cardboard, etc. That's a definite no-go. And think about big electronic items with fans that pull air through them as part of how they function and that have internal parts that can't fully be cleaned, right? That's what I meant when I was talking about air purifiers that were exposed to toxic mold in your last home or space heaters or things like that. So, what did we leave behind when we started RV life? Just about everything that wasn't a solid surface that could be HEPA vacuumed and wiped down. And I know that that might scare some of you. That might sound really overwhelming to let go of that much stuff. Yes, we let go of an enormous amount of stuff. But this wasn't our first rodeo. We had been through a number of toxic mold events. We had been through multiple remediations, and we had tried previous times to salvage certain items that one of us had sentimental attachments to. We had tried to keep those things in containment, wipe them down, etc., and then reintroduce them at a later date to see if they still caused reactions or problems. It never worked. The things that could not be truly decontaminated, they weren't worth it. They could not be salvaged. Your health matters more than any item you could ever own. And it's just not worth it to try to hang on to that stuff and sacrifice your own healing. So let me talk about clothes. Um, I was reacting to even our clothes after our last mold exposure. And I think it's probably because our washer and dryer got contaminated during that last toxic mold event in our house. And so, what we did about clothes is we ended up getting a small manual hand washing machine that didn't have places where mold could set up shop and grow. And we ended up washing some of those old clothes in EC3 in that hand washing machine and air drying them. And then we put them in a airtight plastic suitcase and we designated these are items that we would wear if we needed to stay in a hotel or somebody else's house that wasn't mold safe. And my husband actually uses this set of old clothes that came from our last house a lot when he travels for work. And then he gets them washed by the hotel and puts them back in that suitcase, and they stay there until his next trip. And then we got a limited set of new clothes, washed them in that same plastic hand washing machine, and line dried them outside and stored those separately. And those are the clothes we have worn throughout RV life. This new set, fresh start in terms of clothes. And that's been really great because I haven't been reacting to them, and that has allowed me to actually heal. We do have some space heaters in our RVs that we use, but they're new. We didn't bring them from our last home. We definitely ditched the air purifiers that were exposed to the high levels of mycotoxins in our last house. And actually, we haven't used an air purifier in the RV life at all because we have our windows open all day long, and I am not really sensitive to air outside. So that's worked well for us. That's what we have done, and it was absolutely worth it to heal. Yes, it was painful. It was challenging to let go of so much stuff, to downsize into RV life, and to just stop the ongoing exposure that was happening in our last home, but it was totally worth it. So that's what I would recommend. Number three, stay in dry desert like climates for two reasons. One, it avoids high humidity levels outside, which become high humidity inside. And so, if you're staying in humid environments, you're going to have to use dehumidifiers all the time to keep the humidity level in your RV low enough that mold doesn't want to grow inside or in the walls, and to prevent condensation issues and all of that. So stay in dry desert like climates for that reason. And number two, if you're in a dry desert like climate and it's not monsoon season, there shouldn't be a ton of rain, or it should be pretty infrequent, right? And, avoiding mold exposure is all about avoiding water damage where you live. And so this not having rain all the time just reduces the chances of you having a serious roof leak or a window leak or something like that. But of course, if it's the monsoon season in a desert location, that's probably not where you want to be at that time of year, right? All right, number four, follow the warm weather. And that's so that you can keep the windows open all day and ceiling fans on, which suck in through the windows and then out through the roof. It just keeps fresh air circulating all the time. So then, even if there is a mold issue in the RV, you're still diluting it substantially with healthy air. The other reason to follow warm weather is, when it's cold outside and you have to keep everything closed up just to keep it warm in the trailer, you're more likely to have condensation issues develop inside the trailer. So, being in a warm, dry climate where we can keep the windows open all the time just has prevented moisture issues inside and has allowed us to get tons of fresh air, which is always fantastic in my mind. Number five, try to avoid places where it gets stupid hot so you can avoid running the air conditioner. So, I'm sorry if nobody's told you this yet, but all types of air conditioners, because of how they work, cause condensation to collect inside, where dust and mold spores pass over and collect, and mold loves to grow there, including the types of molds that produce really harmful toxins for human health. But even molds that aren't producing toxins, they do produce other substances that also have negative health effects, such as mycophenolic acid. That's not technically considered a mycotoxin, but molds produce it just as a byproduct of their growth. And it is a serious immunosuppressant, so much so that it's been made into a pharmaceutical drug. And that drug is for the purpose of suppressing the immune system to prevent organ transplant rejection. So, yeah, you really just don't want mold growing in your indoor environment, especially when you're trying to heal from toxic mold exposure. We learned this the hard way about air conditioners in both of our last two homes, where the biggest source of toxic mold was coming from the air conditioners, both times. And we've found it in every type of air conditioner. Our whole house HVAC unit was the major source in our first house, and our mini split and a window air conditioner and several window air conditioners were the source, the main source in our last remediation, our last toxic mold event. And my last exposure, which was probably my worst exposure yet, where I was exposed to high levels of all 14 mycotoxins that were tested for, that exposure came from a window air conditioner unit. And this was the exposure that caused me to have anaphylactic reactions for the first time in my life. And those reactions completely resolved immediately with remediation. So, yeah, air conditioners can be a significant source of toxic mold exposure. So, if possible, while you're healing, don't give mold the conditions it likes for reproduction inside your home. And included in that is avoid using an air conditioner if you can. And I'm kind of a pansy with heat, I will admit, and I find it hard to work when I'm super hot. So we aim for staying in places where daytime temperatures average between 65 and 80 degrees. But of course, sweating is a great way to detox from mold toxins and other types of toxins. So if you're comfortable being hot and just sweating it out, by all means, you can spend time in hotter places, and this may actually support your detox. Just remember, if you're doing that, to drink lots of water and add electrolytes so that you actually stay hydrated enough to keep that sweat and urine detox going. So, avoid air conditioning if at all possible. That was number 5. All right, number 6, keep the RV clean. Dust can be a food for mold, but it would need high humidity or moisture to be present to really start eating that and reproducing in mass. But if you can keep dust levels down, that's a good idea. So we have a little hand vac that has a HEPA filter in it, and we use that and dust cloths and EC3 wipes for cleaning the inside of the RV. And that works really well for us to keep the dust down. Number 7, don't use the laundromats. If you've become hypersensitive to mold, mycotoxins, and chemicals as a result of toxic mold exposure, and you're just starting to heal, it's really not the best idea to use public laundromats. And I would say it's also maybe not advisable to have a front-loading washing machine in your RV or a dryer that isn't vented to the outside inside your RV. Front loading washers, including the ones at the laundromats, are notorious for mold and mycotoxin issues. And all public laundry machines are going to be full of a lot of chemicals that people are using from conventional laundry soaps and stuff like that. And I know some of you may have some issues with those as well. And generally, when you're trying to detoxify from one toxic exposure, i.e., your last mold toxin event, introducing other toxins is not a great idea, right? It can slow down the process. It can divide your body's attention. Now it's trying to get out all these chemicals from laundry detergent and dryer sheets when it was already really struggling to get out the backlog of mycotoxins, right? So, what's an alternative? You can do laundry in a hand crank washing machine called a Wonder Washer. I'm sure there are others, but that's the one that we have. And you can use your own non-toxic natural soap, and you can also use EC3 as a laundry additive to help control mold in clothing. And that's what we do. And even though we have a tiny bathroom, I mean, one of those ones where the toilet is inside the shower, it's really tiny. I put a flat, sturdy piece of plastic with drain holes in it on the toilet. It's like bigger than the toilet, takes up a nice amount of space. And then I can put the Wonder Washer on that. And then I use the shower head to fill the Wonder Washer, and I drain the Wonder Washer right into the shower drain. So that's how we do our laundry on the road. Yeah, it is a pain. It's definitely not as convenient as just having a washing machine and dryer, but it's also very doable. And for us, it's worth it to avoid public laundry machines. Then, once you have washed the clothes, you can have a spinner. We also have a spinner we bring on the road with us that gets most of the water out of the clothes so that they dry faster. So that's electric. It plugs in, we put it outside, and it just drains onto the ground. So spin the extra liquid out of the clothes. And then we started out with line drying our clothes, but it did take a long time sometimes, especially on cooler or more humid days. And so we ended up getting a miniature dryer, and that has made laundry days so much more efficient. We have a Panda brand 1.5 cubic foot compact dryer that we bought on Amazon, and it's easy to lift and move in and out of the RV. So we just put it outside when we're going to be drying laundry, and then it vents directly outside. So all of that humid air the dryer is producing doesn't collect inside the RV, and it's been a great system for us. So that's what we do with laundry, and take it or leave it. It's an option for you to avoid mold and mycotoxin exposure while you are healing. Number 8, consider a really plush camping mattress instead of a normal mattress. If you do decide to use a normal mattress in your RV, you're going to need some excellent added ventilation underneath the mattress so that mold doesn't grow under it and in it. So we've been using some pretty plush camping mattresses from day one of RV life. I use a 6-inch thick Mega Mat Max, which is an inflatable mattress that has foam on the inside of the inflatable. And it's actually really comfortable. I really like it. I think it's actually more comfortable than the last two mattresses I've had in my house, like normal mattresses. We combo that with a wool mattress topper on top of it, and then cotton sheets, and then a wool comforter. So, why are we using a camping mattress? So the camping mattress is not moisture permeable. It's a sealed blow up mattress, and moisture comes off of us when we sleep at night, and a normal mattress will absorb that moisture to some degree. And most RV bed platforms are not designed for allowing airflow below the mattress, airflow to the mattress from below and out of the mattress from below. And that's super critical actually for preventing mold from growing in the mattress and on the bottom of the mattress. So, as an example, in our ATC trailers, the bed platforms are solid metal platforms where mold would almost certainly grow if the warm, humid air from our bodies were being transferred to the cold metal on the other side of the mattress. It would condense there from the temperature change and get trapped, and then we would have mold growth. And this is a notorious problem for RVers and van lifers and all of the above. So learn from their mistakes. Don't let that happen to you. In addition to that, as we talked about, depending on where you're living RV life, like the humidity levels outside and maybe in your trailer, you might have high humidity levels if you're not using a dehumidifier, and that humidity would end up in the mattress, and mattresses can be pretty prone to mold growth when there's too much moisture inside them. So like I said, we haven't had issues with humidity in our RVs because we've been in these desert locations and following warm weather. So that allows us to keep windows open and to not have condensation inside and all of that. The camping mattress prevents mold from growing on the surface that you arguably need to be the cleanest of mold for your healing. It's where you spend 8 hours of every day. If your mattress is exposing you to mold and mycotoxins, your healing isn't going to go very well. So I've been monitoring all sides of these mattresses for the 6 months we've been living RV life, and there hasn't been the slightest mold growth. There's one other reason to consider a camping mattress, especially if you've still got some detoxifying to do from your prior exposures. We humans do a lot of detoxifying at night. And if you've ever been exposed to severe levels of mold toxins, you may have had the experience of having night sweats for that very reason. I definitely have, and they were definitely my body desperate to get toxins out. And the sweat I would sweat out at night also just, when I was being exposed to toxins, just smelled horrible. Like I was repelled by it. And I think that's the body's wisdom saying, hey, there's some toxins in that. That's not good for you. But, anyways, our bodies love to detoxify at night. Those mycotoxins coming out of your skin at night, they don't just disappear when they come out of your body. They get soaked into the bedding. And if your mattress is permeable, they'll soak into that too. And so your mattress can become a source of re-exposure, right? Because those mycotoxins can just blow right back out of the mattress when you roll over at night or when a gust of wind comes through the camper or whatever. So, the camping mattress has allowed me to have bedding that's easy to wash, and a mattress that's impermeable so it's not collecting the toxins coming out of me. And then, why wool? Well, we paired this mattress with a bunch of wool things again so that moisture wasn't getting trapped up against the mattress. So I paired the camping mattress with a wool mattress topper. That has had two benefits. One, we never feel like we're sticking to the mattress, like we're sleeping on plastic. That actually really sucks. So don't do that. The wool mattress topper has been amazing for eliminating that. And of course, it's wool is so great for helping any moisture coming off of me to wick away and evaporate. And then we use cotton sheets again because they breathe really well and dry quickly. And then finally, a thin wool comforter, and we got those in a twin size so that they would fit in the Wonder Washer. And we absolutely love these comforters because they breathe so well. They never leave us overheated or sweating at night, and they allow moisture to evaporate through them. Okay, so that's the bed. Tip number 9, keep fabric items that get wet regularly outside, like your camping chairs and your camp rug that you use on the ground outside. Don't store those things or transport them in your living space because they might have some accumulation of mold growing in and on them. We transport ours in the back of our truck or the hatch under the RV, not in our living space. And that's just to reduce bringing mold into your living space. Number 10, for items that we don't use often, we keep those in airtight plastic storage bins. The ones that have the gasket around the edge so humidity and other things don't get inside. And that way, even if we do have a mold event in the trailer, our stuff is staying clean. I actually store my clean clothes this way too. These bins do double duty to keep those clothes clean and also to keep them organized because our ATC trailer had nothing resembling a closet for storing clothes. There actually was no appropriate storage for clothes in the trailer. And so that's been my solution. If you've ever been through a remediation and the accompanying small particle clean, you'll get why it just makes sense to keep your stuff stored this way if it's easy enough to do. And in RV life, it works really well. So, number 11, monitor the caulking in your bathroom and kitchen and keep some caulk on hand for repairing it yourself. Anywhere water might contact it, you really got to keep an eye on that so you don't end up with hidden leaks, especially into hidden spaces where you can't see if there's a mold issue developing. Caulking in RVs fails much faster than in a house due to greater temperature swings and also the huge amounts of motion, like a massive earthquake that occurs every time you move the RV. And so you need to keep that stuff on hand and be prepared to repair it yourself. And I would say that's also a good idea for the sealant that you need to put around roof fans and things like that, because if you do get a leak, you're going to want to stop that as soon as possible. So keep that stuff on hand just in case. Number 12, just like in a house, you can put water alarms under exposed plumbing. In our trailer, there's a bunch of exposed plumbing and the hot water heater and whatnot under the kitchen sink, and we can see all of it, which is really nice. You can put a leak detector there so that you know if something's gone wrong and you're having a leak. Number 13, if you're going to leave the RV unattended for an extended period of time, like you're going for a weekend away somewhere or whatever, maybe consider turning off the water to the RV altogether. So if a leak does develop inside the RV, it doesn't result in a flood. Okay, number 14, don't leave the valve to the septic tank open. So, your RV is going to have a black tank that collects your poops and stuff. And you can either have the valve to that open so that the tubing dumps it into the RV park septic system immediately, or you can have that closed. I'm suggesting that you keep that closed, except for in the moments when you're just emptying that tank. We've noticed that if we leave that open and we have the hosing connected to the RV park septic system, that we get backflow of some really gnarly smelling septic gas from the park septic system. And septic gas can contain endotoxins that also have harmful effects on health. So what I do is I keep that closed and I empty the septic tank about once a week and I hose it out every time. There's a water inlet so that I can hose out the tank with water and completely clear out everything in there. So I do that every time and then I close the valve back up. With that, we haven't really noticed any gnarly smells in our RV, even just from our own remains in the tank. We really don't have an issue with that. And so I think that that's a good plan because endotoxins are one of those things you can also be exposed to in water damaged buildings. And so your system might already be burdened with a backlog of those, or you might have become hypersensitive to those. So reducing that exposure, I think, is a good idea. So, those were all of my tips for now, at least the ones that I could think of for helping you to avoid a toxic mold exposure while you're living RV life and trying to heal. I hope that this video was helpful to you. If it was, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and leaving me a comment. I really appreciate your comments. I love knowing that I'm not in a vacuum out here and that you guys are really appreciating the content that I'm making. If you know somebody who might really benefit from RV life to get out of their toxic home, please share this video series with them so that they have some more information about what it's like and can be more successful, hopefully, if they end up doing that. All right. If you need some help healing from mold exposure yourself or from nervous system dysregulation, you can check out my links below to connect with me. Thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.